our keynote speaker. You are in for a treat, as you have been all day. Our closing keynote speaker is someone who is so dynamic and influential and one of the most prominent leaders in the field of education. And this is Mr. Josh Parker, the 2012 Maryland Teacher of the Year and the Vice Chair of Equity for NNSTOY. Josh Parker's mission in education and life is to help people and solve problems. Throughout his career, he's achieved both goals. He served students and teachers within the Baltimore-Washington, D.C. corridor as an ELA instructional coach, language arts department chair, secondary language arts teacher, professor, and compliance specialist. He is probably also a superhero on the side, right? He's also served teachers, administrators, educational leaders throughout the country as the Senior Director of Programs and Engagement at Unbound Ed. Mr. Parker, a Teaching Channel laureate and Education Week writer, was also a Lowell Milken Unsung Hero in 2017, NEA Global Fellow in 2013, and as I mentioned earlier, the Maryland Teacher of the Year, and that was 2012. The list goes on and on and on, and I don't have enough time to tell you all of his accolades, but for now, he is a full-time educational consultant and lives with his wife of over a decade, Tiffany, and their two children, Layla and Joshua. It is my true honor to introduce the closing keynote for today, Mr. Josh Parker.
Thanks so much, Natasha. That was such a great introduction. Halfway through, I was wondering who you were mentioning. So I'm glad it's me. So that's great. But thank you so much. And you're a superstar as well. Actually, we just, in one of my classes, or class that I'm teaching right now, we just reviewed one of your blog posts. So thank you for your contributions and all that you do for education. Greetings, everyone. Happy to be here. There's a lot to discuss today. And I really want to just acknowledge the National Network of State Teachers of the Year and the great job that Bob and Lauren and the team have done to put on a phenomenal summit. I'm so appreciative of all the work that they do and also what they've done to make today special. I want to shout out, of course, all the technology folks that are making this moment happen, and also all the people in front who have done different panels and breakouts. Just thank you all for making today such a fantastic moment for educators and leaders and community members beyond our borders. And I'm so happy to close this out because the table has been set. So I'm going to try my best to get a good meal for y'all in this next 30 minutes, 29 minutes now. All right. So what I want to talk to you about is the power of next. The power of next is my talk for today. And my division for this talk is going to be in before, now, and next. Before, now, and next. So if you're watching right in the comfort of your own home, I won't hear you say this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. That's how I grew up, right in the church. I want you to say there is power in next. Actually, I think I heard you all say that, so that's cool. There is power in next. I'm super excited. So I want you to remember three numbers at the beginning. I will come back to these numbers at the end. Three numbers are 25, 50, and 66. 25, 50, and 66. I want to say from the outset, for all the teachers that have done such a magnificent job during this unprecedented time, thank you. And we need you now to create what's next. So 23 years ago, I was in Memphis, Tennessee. My family is from Memphis, Tennessee. A mother and father grew up there. And we went to visit a church with some of my family friends, my mother and father's friends. And one of the friends, his name was Mr. Cliff. And Mr. Cliff had a mother, and we were giving our pleasantries, and his mother, a beautiful woman, had glasses on, and she was in blue. We were right in front of a church service, and she was shaking all the hands of my siblings and my mother, my father, and just saying hi. And so she got to me, and she shook my hand, and she froze. And I was like, okay, like, I'm a young teenager at that time, so I'm worried, like, did I do something right to this woman? I'm about to get in trouble. So she froze, and she looked at me, and it seemed like when she looked at me, she was looking through me in time. It was powerful. And she looked back at my family friend, Mr. Cliff, and she said, "This boy is going to speak to thousands. This boy is going to speak before many people." Now, at the time, I'm 15. I'm like, okay, right? I hope it's a good reason for me speaking in front of all these people. But she said, "Believe me." And she looked at me with a look that I will never forget. She says, "When I see these things in my spirit, I'm never wrong." And so I want to really bring that out, as that experience is part of my before, right? We have all had a before. I'm speaking to you right now in the now, but really we've all had a before as a person, right? When I speak about the idea of before, I'm talking about that time in your life when I met the lady down in Memphis, right? When your norms, values, beliefs, habits, loyalties are really formed in that before, that formative part of your life. So let me ask you a question. What type of beliefs, norms, values, and loyalties are in your before? In my before as a kid, like, I wanted to be Kobe Bryant. I absolutely wanted to be a basketball player. I knew I was going to the NBA, and several other boys who looked like me were going to the NBA. So that was in my before, right? In my before as a teacher growing up, and I was still young the first year out, I thought that all I needed to do was to show up and kids would listen to me. That was my before. I thought that knowing the content was more than enough in my before. And as a Black man, in my before as a kid and as an adult, because my before can also be recent, I learned that my mind had to be protected from thoughts that were devaluing me. I had to learn and I had to understand in my before that I had to protect my heart from dangerous things that I could believe about myself if I didn't increase my self-esteem through knowledge of myself. And I also learned that my body was consistently in trouble, that if it was in the wrong space, in the wrong time, that it could be harmed. That's in my before. And I want to bring up some images now to help remind us of what is in our before as a country. We have been in a tremendous before. Our before has a reach. And that reach is really important because it sets up all of the things that come after. So our before really has had some great moments in a country with education, but it's also had some moments to forget. As you see on the screen, there are images where in our before as Americans, we had to fight for equal rights. Integration was a struggle. This is in our before as a country. The reason why that's important is because if you ignore your before, it's going to show up in the now in ways you cannot anticipate. Your before matters. We have had a before as a country that was steeped in these type of battles over what's right or what should be taught. We've had a before even recently, right? Before COVID, right? That before was still steeped in this inequity that exists in too many schools and in too many places. And we must teach the before. What's the use in banning a theory if the practices are still in place? No, we're going to teach the before because the before has a reach that matters. we will teach it. Because before has a reach, and it sets up really the importance of now. Now matters almost more than ever. All right. Think about what you're doing right now. Think about what is happening in this moment. Now has been created by before, but exists moment by moment in the schools and in the places that we call our work and our home. So here's why now matters. Now matters, unfortunately, because there still are remnants of before that are showing up now. You're not seeing in color pictures from 1960s. These are in color pictures from 6 weeks ago, from 6 months ago. This is recent, and this is why now matters, because we have to understand that now has a relationship to before. So we have to understand that it's still present and it's still here. But here's the beauty of that, and this is why now is really important. Now is important because it's the place where equity can thrive. Equity happens in the now. It happens in the moments between what was before and what can come. When I think about equity, I think about the times when I've been in class, right? Where I have seen a student struggle. And then also I've seen them be frustrated with a learning assignment. And what I did in that moment really determined how much equity that student would receive. So that now matters because equity exists in the now, in the moments, in the decisions that we're making. So let me ask you another question. What are you doing with your now? Are you in either one of those pictures, in spirit or in actuality? Are you in those pictures by the things that you promote in the classroom? Where are you and how are you using your now? Because just as important and just as possible as it is to promote equity in the now, it's also extremely possible to promote inequity in the now. This is why now is so important. It's happening moment by moment, and it's where inequity can just sit and maintain a place. It's where I see a problem, but I say it's going to take too much, so I won't deal with it right now. Or when I see something happening that has been happening for a long time, but I won't get to it now, I actually am going to try to get to it later. I'm here to tell you that now is critically important because it is the place and the pivot point for where equity can live or equity can die. So again, I'm going to ask you, what are you doing with your now? Because before has a reach, it sets up what is now. But I'm here to tell you, this is where I want to spend the bulk of the rest of my time. Next actually has the power to change it all. So I want to go back to the earlier part of my message when I talked about the lady that was in Memphis that told me about what I would do. Well, fast forward some years later, I'm an adult. I've taught for a few years, and I got really, really fortunate to run for my county teacher of the year position. And I was like, okay, great. I'll try it out. Didn't think I was going to win. It's okay. The biggest crowd that I had spoken to before then was probably 30 kids in front of my class. And so I went and I became a finalist for the Maryland Teacher of the Year. Now, prior to that moment, there'd only been one African-American male teacher of the year in the state, Will, and there had been none from Baltimore County Public Schools. And so when I won that night, it was a surreal moment. And I went up to the stage, and when I looked out over the crowd, it was over 1,000 people. And I was reminded of what that lady said in Memphis of what I would do. So her understanding of what was next for me came true in that moment, and it has powered me through some of the most difficult and powerful times in my life. I've had mountaintop moments. I've had really, really low moments where there's been challenges that I never thought that I would see. But it is the power of next and what that lady said and what I saw for myself that pulls me through all of those nows to create a better next. So I'm going to now talk to you about the power of next and what we want to do with it. All right. So again, you got to repeat after me. And I know, listen, I know I can't hear you, but if you're not saying it, something's going to happen. Okay. So again, repeat after me. There is power in next. Okay, I'm hearing it all over the country. Okay, awesome, awesome. So there's a couple of parts to the power of next, and there are 4 specific parts that I want to lean into right now. If you want to leverage the power of next in your life and in educational communities, you're going to have to see next, invest in next, organize for next, and co-create next. Right now, it's July, but I'm going to tell you what got me a little upset, even though I'm no longer in the classroom. I went to a Target the other day, and there's already school supplies up. Hey, I'm sitting like, hey, we could need some more before here. We don't need what's next right now. But next is coming, right? We've been through a pandemic, right? And we're still in one, but next is coming, right? Next school year is coming. I just saw one article on Twitter where an organization, a school district, is coming back early August, August 2nd. That's less than 3 weeks or from now, right? So next is coming, but we have to be able to leverage the power of next, which I argue is the most powerful time that we can have in order to get to that next level. So how do we do it? Let's start with this. You got to see next. This is not a light point. We have a lot of people that can talk about next, but can they see next? What does next look like, right? For kids that are on the screen that I have, for kids of all races, what does next look like for them? What does next look like for you as a teacher? Remember, I said we need you now for what we can create next. If you're looking for ways to see your own next, what are you bothered by right now? What is bringing you pain, right? What is actually something that is engaging you and that you lose track of time focusing on? Those are the things that are a part of your next. So what can you do with that? Talk about it. Imagine it. Close your eyes and look for it with your heart. Talk with others about it. If you need to, draw it, right? Write a song about it. But you got to think about and see what's next. Because if you can't see what's next, there's no sense in moving in the now because it will always be rooted in the before. So you got to see what's next. Not just what's next, what's the next CDC guideline, right? That's of course important. But what's the next interaction my kids are going to need when I come back to school? What's the next intervention that I'm going to do with kids who may have been missing from school that's going to honor that they didn't lose learning? They learned something, and I can actually honor who they are as a student by piling on the learning, right? What is a scaffold that's not going to dumb down the instruction, but is going to level them up, right? What's the next interaction that they're going to need to maintain their dignity? Some students, actually a lot of students, have just witnessed a murder on screen with George Floyd. What kind of idea and what kind of support are they going to need next? We have to see next. We need a lot more people that can really see what's next. And so, what are you seeing right now for the next in your life? What are you seeing right now when you come back to school? You have to see next. It's really critical. So the next point I want to bring up, you don't just see next. Once you see it and you can visualize it, you actually have to invest in next. This is an important point that I want to bring up. If you're not invested in next, then you only have stock in before. You have to invest in next. What does that mean? That means if I invest in next, I got to think about what is it that I have to leave from before: norms, values, habits, loyalties. if I'm committed to an equitable next. Isn't it funny? We've only talked about learning loss in the context of kids. Might there be some learning loss that adults might need? We don't think about it like that. Because I know whenever I become a better teacher and a better person, there's some learning loss that I needed, and then there's some learning that I added because I was invested in what's next. You have to invest in what's next with your mind and with your heart, but also with your body. How often do you visit the places where the kids are that you serve? How often do you communicate with the community? Right? We have to invest not just in our money, because we invest enough of that. If you're a teacher, you invest a lot of your money, but invest your time, your heart, and your mind in the people and the students that you serve. So if you're going to harness the power of next, you're going to have to see next. You're going to have to invest in what's next. And what that means is, what is it that I have to lose? And then what do I have to gain in order to be invested in what's next? Too many people in education, I've been that person before, are so invested in before that they mess up the next for themselves and others. The next part of harnessing this power of next is you got to organize for next. Listen, next doesn't just happen. Right, you're seeing the image right now of Zaila Avant-Garde, right? She organized her schedule and time to get 3 Guinness Book World Records before becoming a spelling bee champ, which was her side gig, right? You got to organize for next. And I want to come to this point. Organizing for next means making space in your heart and in your head and your classroom for what the next movement should look like. We can't continue to only talk about the achievement gap. What happens when the achievement gap is resolved? We got to organize for that and beyond. If we're just organizing for resolving the achievement gap, then that's where we'll stay. Let's organize for the gap and beyond, because there's more than just a gap that we need to mind. We got to organize. How can we organize our schedule and our day to include more learning about cultures that are different than our own? How can we organize the classrooms virtually, right? There are breakout room spaces. How can we organize spaces where kids can be their full and authentic selves? How can I organize with other people to create affinity groups and or sort of groups that can lobby for the changes that are needed in schools? We have to organize for next if we're going to harness the power of next. So, the last piece that I really want to bring up, right? We're harnessing the power of next. We first have to see next. We have to invest in next. We have to organize for next. And then we have to co-create next. We have to create next with other people. And I argue that we have to create next with the people that we serve, the kids and the community. We can't harness the power of next if the only people that we're working with are ourselves. We have to work with those that are with our cause. We have to try to work with those that in good faith can sort of work with us in the cause, right? But we have to co-create that future that I talked about seeing and then creating. So we have to co-create next. Do you remember those numbers from the first part of my talk? What are those numbers? Okay, some of y'all got like 1 or 2 of them. The numbers are 25, 50, and 66. 25, 50, and 66. 25 refers to the percent of teachers, according to a recent study, that are considering leaving the profession after this year. That's 1 in 4. 50 is the percent of teachers who are Black that are considering leaving the profession after this school year. That's 1 in 2. 50.7 million kids are actually coming back to school this fall. 50.7 million kids. But if I were to give this talk at the beginning of a school year or the middle of the school year, 66 kids would have dropped out on average by the end of the speech. So I use those numbers to help us understand that the power of next isn't just using the ideas of the present or the past to create a special next for you. The power of next is actually in the next that you can create for those who need it. I submit to you that maybe those students, some who've dropped out, teachers who are considering leaving, maybe it's been hard for you to see your next. Maybe you're in organizations that are making it really hard for you to see what's next for you, or they can't see your next. I want to tell you that if you're in an organization or a district or in a situation where someone who is leading you can't see your next, you might need to change your now. Because we need you now to create what's next. I'll conclude with this. There have been many times in my life and certainly in this pandemic crisis where I've been so consumed with what's now. Like what's happening now? What's the latest numbers? When will school open? What's happening right now? But what I've begun to learn is that there is a power in seeing a next that is equitable for all, that includes all, and that has the potential to lift everyone into a space where they can be their highest and best self. Repeat after me again. There is power in next. There is power in next. There is power in next. So I leave you with this question. How will you use it? Thank you.
And I will say, there is power in next. Thank you so much, Josh. I hope everyone feels empowered as much as I do by the power of
Thank you.
next in your closing keynote. That was an extraordinary conclusion to our day. And I'd like to also thank all of the presenters, speakers, panelists, but more important, I'd like to thank everyone who engaged with us today throughout this summit. I am super excited and energized, and I hope you are as well, from every session of this year's 2021 NNSTOY Summit on Student and Teacher Resilience and Wellbeing. If you haven't already received one, you will receive an email shortly with your certificate of attendance, but this email will also have a survey. And we're asking that you please take a minute to add your thoughts to that survey by responding to the link in that email that you will receive. Also, in the upcoming weeks, please look out for access to recordings of all the sessions, including the keynotes, the roundtable, and all the breakout sessions, since today you were only able to really select one of those 4 phenomenal breakout sessions. We hope that you continue to engage with us on Twitter at NNSTOY and also on Facebook. Our Facebook page is at NNSTOY Teachers Leading. We are looking forward to continuing our collaboration with you on this most important topic of resilience and well-being. And we look forward to connecting with you to continue to significantly impact the field of education, the future of education for all students. Thanks again for joining us today. Continue to be resilient and be well.